Hello soulmates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be teaching you how to cut and also how to sew this beautiful dress. But for this tutorial, it will be about the pattern drafting and the cutting of the fabric. So the next tutorial will be about the sewing. So I divided it into two because the whole process was too long and I don't want to make this video a long one. So in this video, it will be about the pattern drafting and the cutting of the fabric. So if this is something you're interested in, please like this video, comment, subscribe, and click on that bell icon so that you can get notified when I drop the second video. Welcome back, guys. So for this style, you have to know the length of your gown, where you want the whole length to get to. So mine, I want it to get to length 40. Then I'm taking out 8 inches for the gathers at the lower part. So what I have here is just 32 inches length. So now on this pattern, I have my shoulder, my armhole. I'm drawing my bust line now. I have my under bust, I have my waist, my hip, and the end of the gown, which is 32. So with the gathers that will be at the bottom, that will be 40. So after you've done that, the next thing to do now is to measure your bust measurement divided by 4. I'm not adding any sewing allowance to this pattern. And on the under bust and the waist area, you measure your measurement divided by 4. So at first, after measuring my waist and my under bust, I added a dart allowance to it. So after drawing it on my pattern, I noticed it will not work. So later I drafted my bust, waist and hip measurements without adding any darts to it. So at the hip area, you also measure your hip measurement divided by 4. So at the lower part of this gown, I measured my hip measurement divided by 4, then I added extra 1 inch to it. So let's say your hip measurement divided by 4 is 9. So I measured 10 at this area just to make it wide a little bit. So I'm trying to connect the first line I drafted with the dots. So that is what I'm trying to connect now. And for the lower part, I first connected the hip straight down first before I reconnected it to the 1 inch that I told you I added at the lower part. So that is why it is like slant at the lower part. So like I said, after I drafted this first line, I noticed that it will not work for what I was for the style. It won't work for the style. So I'm redrafting, I'm reconnecting this point again without the dart at the waist area. So this is what it looks like. So let me use a marker to draw this out so that you can see it clearly. So at this waist area, I noticed it was sharp, so I just added I just filled it in with a little bit. So the under bust is where the gathers at the upper part is starting from. So that was why I ruled a line at the under bust. So I'm doing my shoulder slope now. Then for the neckline, so I don't want my bust to be showing, so I'll be using a 3 inches wide, that is unfold. Then the length, I will draw it down to my bust area. Then towards the under bust area, it will be overlapping. So normally I should draw it from the shoulder down to the under bust, but I don't want to be revealing my bust, so I drew it down to my bust area. Then I will make it overlap at the bust to the under bust area. I hope that is clear. I will show that too very soon so that you will understand. So I went ahead to cut out the pattern I will be using, and this is what it looks like. So I'm placing this pattern on the front pattern like this for the back because I don't want to draft a full back pattern, but there's a difference between the front and the back pattern towards the upper part area. So I'm trying to cut a pattern that is just getting to the under bust area of the front pattern, but you can see that I added my zipper allowance. So that's one of the difference between the front and the back. Then I'll be reconnecting these points later. I'll be showing you how to do the back later on as we move on in this video. So the next thing I'll be doing to this back pattern is to transfer my bust line. So I'm transferring my bust line to the back pattern. So I'll keep this first, then let's continue with the front. So I'm cutting out the neckline for the front. Then I'll also cut out the waist area. So I'll roll that, the under bust area rather. So I'll roll that out to this other side. So after rolling the line, you go ahead and you cut it out. That's you just separate the upper part from the lower part. It's the under bust area. So the next thing is to continue this line from the neckline, from the shoulder. So you just continue it downward to the under bust. So this little part will serve as the overlapping. So this will serve as the overlapping. So whenever you want to cut the front, you cut two. You cut two of these. So one for the right and one for the left. So for this lower part, the next thing I'll be doing is to move up by about 5 inches at this area. At one side, depending on where you want the slant part to be. If you want it to be by the left, you slant the left, and if you want it to be by the right, you go ahead and slant the left right. So you just go ahead and connect it down to the other part just like this. So for the back, the first thing we have to do is to roll a line. So that line is serving as our zipper allowance. Then at the bust line that we transfer using the tracer wheel, we'll roll that out. So for the neckline, it will be the same neckline too. But for this part, from that bust area, connect it towards the under bust area like this. This is because if we use the length of the under bust for the back, it will be too deep. It will be too deep and it will be too low. So for this neckline, from the bust area like that, just connect it upward. So the neckline is 3 inches plus the zipper allowance, that's 4 inches. So for this part also, just extend it outside. So this smaller part I'm cutting is still useful, so you still have to keep it. So this is what the upper part for the back will look like. So for the lower part of the back, see this part that we cut out the other time, we'll be attaching it to this front. So the only difference between these will be that the lower part does not have the zipper allowance, but we'll be adding it when we are cutting it on the fabric. So just stay tuned to see that. So now let's cut the lower part of the front on fabric. So after folding this pattern, as you can see, the smaller part is underneath. So don't use the smaller part to cut it. Use the longer part to cut it. Then after you are done cutting and adding your necessary sewing allowance, you now open it up. You notch the upper part, then you open it up like this. You open the pattern also, then you slant the other side that is smaller. So just go ahead and slant this other part. So that is what we have. So for this, I cut out 2 for it. So I cut out this fabric, then the lining. And also when you're transferring to your fabric, make sure you know the right side where you want the slant to be, so you don't make the mistake. So for the back, you add these smaller pieces to these front bodies. So you fold the front bodies to just like the way you are cutting your front, or you add a sewing allowance of 1 inch at this part. Then you know for this smaller part, it has the sewing allowance, that is the zipper allowance rather, it has it already. So at this part, I prevented zip bulging, so I just took out ½ inch at that waist area that's below the underbust. I couldn't show that because it was not recording, that's why I did not show it. So this is what the back look like. So we also have to reduce one of the side. just like we did for the front. So one of the side, you make sure that it is rhyming with the front. So you just place the pattern like this, then you just cut out this parts so that one side will be shorter than the other. So you go ahead and cut this out. Like I said, you add necessary sewing allowance. I added 1 inch for the side and ½ inch for the joining. So now that is all about the back. So these are the front upper bodies. The next thing is to slash and spread because there is a gathers at the upper part. So what I did was to slash and spread this. You divide it as many as you can. Then I numbered it. So for the front, I'll be cutting it out, like I'll be separating each one from the rest. That is, one will be separate, two will be separate. Then I'll be transferring it on the fabric now. So after placing it on the fabric, this is what it looks like, and the difference between each one is about 2.5 inches. And for this part where the number one is, I left about 1.5 inches because I'll be folding that in. That will be the neckline. That is why I left about 1.5 inches there. So I'm notching where it will start from and when the upper part is, so that when I want to fold, I start folding from the notching. So we'll just make it gathers and it will look like this, so something like this. So for the back, we'll go ahead and do the same thing too, but you make sure you are careful with this back. It is not straight like the front, it has a curvy edge. So you make sure you spread it out. The more you spread, the more the gathers you will have. Like I said, at this number one area, you leave about 1.5 inches for the folding. Then you add ½ inch at the lower part and ½ inch at the upper part for the joining. So I'm notching this part here also, so that when I fold, like this, I will have something to fold. So we'll also make a gather too with this, and that is what the back will look like. So this is what the pattern will look like after we are done with the gathers. So in the next video, I'll be showing you how to sew this and also how I got this pattern. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't liked, please like, comment, share, subscribe, click on the bell icon so that you can get notified when I drop the second part.